Hey everybody, welcome back to another kind of bonus interview episode thing. We've been a little while since we've done one of these, unless you count the Dragon Meat get-together thing, but yeah, who's counting? I'm joined today for a casual chat about gaming, podcasting, and whatnot by Squid from Saviours RPG. How you doing, man?
Yeah, not so bad. Good to be here.
Yeah. So surviving in this self-isolation world that we now live in.
Yeah, definitely going a bit stir crazy. I live on my own, so doing things like this is actually particularly good to get a wee bit extra social interaction with people.
Yeah. The funny thing is, as soon as I started recording, my brain went, yeah, don't bring up coronavirus straight away. And what did I do? That's fine. We're all living it.
Well, absolutely, and it's a genuine thing, and it does relate to gaming quite a lot, because I think it does help out a lot of people. Yeah,
I mean, just the sort of social side of things, being able to actually jump on like a voice call with people for several hours for, an evening or whatever is a big help. I know I've had that's been a big help for me, whether it's, doing game recordings, or we've been doing on the Pretending We Die server, we've been running sort of occasional multiplayer gaming nights, doing Jackbox games, and we had the Stellaris game, which we still need to get back to.
I was just about to say, we didn't totally play Stellaris for like 10 hours or something.
Yeah, but it is. We need to finish that game. We're like 50 years in game away from the end, aren't we? Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, no, that was fun. But yeah, I'm in a sort of similar situation over here. I'm kind of I live with my mum, but craving a little bit of other human interaction, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's all good. But we're not here today to talk about global pandemics.
No. Unless it's as part of an in-game story.
Yeah. Oh god, that was. This is the thing. Yeah, obviously this is going up. This will be going up this week. But like, we've just put out the final episode of Things from the Flood, and like, as this was all ramping up in my head, I'm thinking like, oh, this story is about a small town of people being overrun by some kind of infection while the government flails incompetently. This is not good timing on this.
Perfect timing.
Well, yeah, no. Oh god. Well, I actually put like a like a disclaimer on the start one. I was like, look, we recorded this way before it got this bad. Yeah. We hope it's not in bad taste. But yeah, that's fine. It turned out to not be a virus, but listeners will have to go back and check that out to find out. But yeah, I mean, we should start about talking about how we know each other, kind of thing. I think we first met, was it through Plummet over on Penance?
Through Penance. Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, how did you get involved in that? Because obviously, I kind of I'd met them through Dragon Meat and various things before that, and been involved in Curse of Penance, but sort of, I think you joined Plummet a little later. We've been going for a little while, haven't we?
I think it was about episode 20 or something like that, and it literally was, they put on one of the mutual servers that we have for podcasts. They were just looking for collaborations, they were looking for extra, and I just had time at that point and thought, I usually run games, so it was nice to be a player for a while, and spoke to Dragon and Pupsky, and hit it off. They felt I was a reasonable fit, and the rest, they say, is history.
I think did I miss your first episode on there? I know I came in for the second one.
Probably, I think. Yes.
My memory is terrible for stuff that we actually do in that game. Like,
well, so is mine. It's because it's so enjoyable, but it's enjoyable because we all just talk nonsense for like an hour and a half.
Yeah. I really
behind the curtains, the recordings go on a lot longer than what is edited down.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, I really feel sorry for Nikolai having to edit down the amount of tangents and things that go on in those recording sessions. I know a fair amount do make it into the final thing, but the status of those sessions.
Then he does such a good thing of editing them into like separate Ramblecasts, and now of course they're actually just recording Ramblecasts as their own thing. But
yeah,
I'm sure the first couple was just edited nonsense.
Oh yeah, well,
recorded before a proper episode.
Well, you've been in enough sessions where we've been doing a mic check, and Bellry's section of the mic check has been half an hour. Yeah. It's not quite I mean, it's a bit of a change. I mean, a little peek behind the curtain here. When we do Pretending with Dice mic checks, I think if it takes more than a minute, something's gone wrong, but that's for everybody. I mean, even for this thing, I kind of just mic checked us, casually while we were talking before pressing record. So it's sort of, It is a bit of a changing
not every podcast
pace.
that has a Bellry, though, and I mean that with a lot of love and respect, because I like Bellry an awful lot, but he is very unique in the tangents.
He's a one of a kind, yeah. Yeah. He hasn't yet made it onto Pretending with Dice. I don't know what kind of story would really suit. I'm trying to be diplomatic here. I don't know how I would wrangle him. Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, it's great. But so yeah, I mean, you joined Plummet about episode 20-ish.
20-ish.
Yeah. How many characters have you been through on there at this point? I'm just trying to think.
Only 2, because
you've done quite well then.
Yeah, I did quite well, but I think curtailed a lot because my work and things got in touch, so I missed quite a lot of recordings towards the end. Certainly, sort of last half of 2019, and I think I've only recorded 2 episodes in 2020. And that was before the current thing. Like, work was just mental.
And that is the key to surviving Plummet, is not turning up for the recordings.
I mean, to be fair, like, Meg killed one of my characters by shooting him in the back of the head.
Look, we've all done that. I've done that to at least one of Lenaida's characters. It happens,
It does happen, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's good. It's definitely, and then obviously, meeting so many other folk and stuff like that is good. And I've met Pennants at Tabletop Scotland a couple of times as well.
I was going to say, I know. I think I saw it might have been a group photo with a rare photographed sighting of Nikolai.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because he's always got his big pink fluffy ears on at cons and stuff like that. So, but yeah, we sat down, especially the last one last year, and played board games and stuff all day long. It was really cool.
That's one of those conventions. I mean, it's quite a trip for me to get up to, that whole kind of Perth area. I mean, there's trains go from our local-ish station that I could probably get to Edinburgh. But that's still like a 6-hour, 7-hour train journey. So it's not really ideal.
It's one of the reasons why I've not gone to Dragon Meet and these sorts of things as well, is exactly the same thing. Although the connections to London and stuff are fine, it's time off work, it's hotels, travel expenses, and all these sorts of things. Unless you're managing to plan it like months in advance to get the super cheap train tickets. I mean, I'm lucky. Tabletop Scotland is a 15-minute car journey from my house.
Oh, I can't argue with that then. That's
so, I was super lucky they decided to host it where they did, because I live in a village just outside of Perth in Scotland, so it's not bad
local
at all.
con then for you, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I'd say I would like to come up to that at some point, because it did look a lot of fun. Like I say, it's a bit smaller than Dragon Meet and stuff, and as far as I can surmise.
I mean, they've only had 2 years. They've had to reschedule this year because the UK Games Expo obviously had to be rescheduled because of the current state, and they rescheduled it to the weekend that Tabletop Scotland was going to be.
That's just bad luck, that is.
Yeah, so Tabletop Scotland was meant to be the last weekend in August. They usually do the bank holiday weekend in August, and now I can't remember the exact dates, but it's been pushed back to October. So
everything's getting shuffled around at the moment, isn't it? So
yeah. So it's a bit difficult. But from year 1 to year 2, it almost doubled in size.
Oh, well, that bodes well for sort of hopefully decent attendance this year then.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a big tabletop games library. There's a bring and buy. There's lots of exhibitors, like shops that doing dice and trinkets and gaming related activities and all stuff. But there's also lots of gaming RP sessions. I had my first taste of Alien RPG at a session run last year. There's lots of Dungeons and Dragons. Obviously, it's the biggest game, so it kind of the most sessions being run. But
it's one of those games that even if it's not being, if the event hasn't got any affiliation with Wizards of the Coast, there's going to be somebody playing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then they do like a pub quiz as well, although I think that was happening at the time of the Alien. I'm not sure that Penance thought it was the best last year.
I think I'd heard some murmurings that it wasn't that well organised, but we don't want to throw anybody under the bus here.
No, not at all.
But yeah, like, I mean, that'd be great if I could make it up there at some point. But it's a long way. It's similar for if you could make it down for Dragon Meat, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Dragon Meat, I think, is about as local as it's going to get for me in terms of like that type of games convention. And it's about 2 hours on the train from where I am up to London. So it's not too bad, really. You know, if I catch a quick one, it's like 1 hour and 3/4. But
yeah, that's not bad at all.
Yeah,
it's like you're as close as a local con as you can get.
It's
yes, an hour and a bit on the train. From you, so which is not bad.
Yeah, that's not too bad of a kind of travel time. I can deal with that sort of thing. But as you said, it's all the stuff that goes with it. It's all the kind of organising of like hotels and time off work and things and everything. I mean, but it's all good though. But yeah, I mean, so through that and everything, then, so we should sort of stumble awkwardly through the world's worst segue into.
I'll be the judge of that, AG.
Let me know how I'm doing. As you said, you'd spoken to Dragon and Nikolai sort of on mutual servers, which you are on, I'm guessing, mostly as a representative of Saviours RPG. So how did that group kind of start and sort of get together and whatnot?
A couple of us started in another, maybe I should go back and explain my sort of...
Oh, but yeah, no, by all means, let's start at the beginning. How did you get into tabletop gaming?
Well, I always liked sort of tabletop gaming, but it's, in terms of like tabletop RPGs, it probably started in the early 90s. I started with AD&D 2nd edition. Right. So I'm, not going to go the virtues of THAC0 and all these sorts of things. It's just obviously I have fond memories of it because it's just what I learned. But
everybody remembers their first system quite fondly,
absolutely.
I think. Yeah.
And I played that quite regularly for a few years. And then when I went away to university and started working, it just like completely fell off the radar and stuff. And I always kind of kept going with like board games and video games, but the tabletop RPGs just sort of died a death, mostly because none of my contemporaries played it and things. Then I went through a relationship breakdown and I was like back on my own after quite a long time. And I just thought, fill in the time. Not a woe is me type sort of thing. These things happen, but it was suddenly from having a lot of time in my hands. And I thought, I used to.
I was going to say sort of silver lining sort of thing of like all of a sudden I have time to do other stuff and look at look back again at some old hobbies and things. Absolutely. And at that point, I couldn't find any local groups to me at all. So I went online and I joined a game and it was okay. It wasn't great, but I met another player who's Dombro in Saviours RPG. And then that came to its conclusion because the DM wasn't really capable of running the game. So we found another group and then we found another player. And that game went for a while. And this is all like not podcast or streaming or anything. It was all just between ourselves. Yeah, yeah. And then eventually we got a little bit disenchanted with that game. And they came to me and said, look, we want you to run the game. We've got another friend and we've
got another player that just sort of picked up randomly, like they say, what is it, a rolling stone gathers no moss. We're exactly the opposite. The snowball and just sort of adding people as we rolled along.
I mean, that's often the way these game groups go, kind of thing. I mean, I've sort of mentioned a few times before on the podcast and in various places that I started as my first game. Obviously, back in the day, played Warhammer and other board games and things. But in terms of like RPGs, I started with Star Wars Saga Edition, which obviously we've now done Tempest Squadron on the podcast and stuff. I don't think really any players from that game made it into the next group, because the next group was people from my work who were up for D&D stuff.
Yeah.
But then that kind of was a rolling sort of thing. Like we'd gain one player from the Star Wars one made it over to that group. Almost forgot about him. That's fine.
That's fine.
He won't listen to this. It's fine. He doesn't do podcasts. It's okay. He made it. One player made it over from the Star Wars group to the other D&D group, mainly because he started working at my place where I work. So we kind of built a D&D group about that, and then that rolled for a bit. And some of the storylines we ended up sort of doing bits of on the podcast, I ended up doing in that group. But yeah, I think it's often a way that you'll like kind of roll from one group to another, and like players that get on with each other will stick together, sort of thing.
And that's exactly where we've got to, is like it's now, because obviously there's no right, as I don't really need to tell you, but there's no right way or wrong way to play a game as long as it's meeting the needs of the people around the table, whether it's a physical table or a virtual table.
For sure.
And that's where now the group that we've got together is, they're like, oh, I'm not sure we like the way this is going. And they know that they can come to me and say that, and I'm not going to get all huffy and stroppy and like, but this is my artistic vision.
Yeah, I mean,
which we have had with other DMs, which is why some of those games in the past stopped, because they felt their way was the correct way.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think I try to be as flexible as possible. It's tough.
I mean, we've talked offline, just nattering before, about some of the best sessions are where you've expected it to go in one direction, the party's made another decision, and you're just absolutely freeballing the whole session.
It's freeballing the term there. That's something else, isn't it? Yeah, I know. I get what you mean. Yeah, I mean, I'm all for players if I learned fairly early on, don't plan too much in a concrete way, because it's never going to go that way. And plus, as soon as you embrace that, I find that it's much more fun to just be like, okay, here's, in my head have like, okay, here's my idea, here's what I think the story is going to happen, and then just whenever they diverge off of that, just roll with it and just be like, okay, I guess we're doing this now, and just keep the storyline in the back of your head, because you can always reuse stuff, and or it can be like all they're screwing around means they're going to miss a plot point, which I think has happened a couple of times in various storylines on the podcast, but I haven't like had that plot point not have happened. They just didn't see it, sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, you've got to be flexible, because as you say, there's several DMs out there. Again, not anyone specific, I'm just saying, I know for a fact there are who, they won't deviate from anything. They've got their idea of like, this is my grand design, this is my masterwork. How dare you, a lowly player, try and interrupt the epic tale that I'm telling, and that's not the way to play. Everybody's there to have fun, sort of thing. Yeah,
absolutely. And like I said, I would never name the people. I mean, they're not, as I say, it wasn't a podcast, so it's not anything that's out there in the public anyway, so there's no point. And we didn't have an argument. We just said, look, it's not really working for us. Can't be fun for you having players that are quite obviously not enjoying the session, so we just went our merry way, and no harm done.
Yeah, I mean, I used to read, I'm still on the forums quite a lot, but on somethingawful.com, there was a sort of thread in the traditional games sub forum, which was generally like post funny, weird, and horrifying RPG session stories here.
Yeah.
And like this was I was reading that even before I started running Star Wars the first time. So before I'd done anything, and like it really kind of stuck with me. There's a lot. The general consensus was like, yeah, like no gaming is better than bad gaming, which I think really holds up by a lot of I mean, it's not foolproof, But it could. I would interpret it as like, look, everybody's here to be having fun, and if one person's having a bad time, then you're going to have a bad game, and what are you doing that for, sort of thing.
True. Very true.
A long rambling way to be like, I agree. Yeah. But so you guys got the group sort of together.
Our first campaign was like 2 years long.
Oh, wow.
And again, it was just a private game.
Yeah.
We started streaming on Twitch purely because we were all so bad at taking notes. And we started streaming literally just so we had a recording of the previous session that we could watch before we started our next game.
Like, whatever it takes.
Yeah, there was no oh no, we need this deserves an audience because we're just so good. It's nothing like that at all. That's how we started. We're just so bad at notes, all of us. And that's where it started. So we started streaming weekly on Twitch. Then after the first sort of streamed campaign, we moved over to Mixer just purely because a friend was there and there's more of a community for us there.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's basically the same. It's just Twitch is Amazon owned and Mixer is Xbox owned. So that's really the only bit.
So pick your mega corporation, really.
Yeah, exactly. But we kind of had, as I say, friends there already. So and that was that. But streaming's kind of difficult at the moment because one of our players who does all the production and stuff, all the OBS back stuff, which I can do, but not when I'm DMing because it's just too much.
Oh yeah,
running
so there's a lot of
20 and OBS
there.
and different scenes and stuff like that. It's just too much. Happily do it for other people, but not when I'm actually running the game. His internet connection was really badly damaged in the storms in February, and it's only just starting to sort of be fixed now. I mean, it was actually infrastructure damage.
Yeah.
So
really bad timing on that as well. Now we all need to be inside with Netflix running and things.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just been so. I don't think we've actually streamed RPG since beginning of December last year. Now.
Oh wow!
It's done a little bit of games here and there, but so it's the podcast that's kept going. But again, he was in our Call of Cthulhu, which was in the podcast, and we've had to kind of pause that and do another sort of short D&D one in the middle till he's able to have a stable connection.
Yeah. I mean,
as you know, recording this and somebody's dropping calls all the time,
it doesn't help. I mean, it's as you said, there's unavoidable situations, and you've just got to kind of make the best of it, really. I mean, just based on the current situation and that, I mean, all of our plans over here have been thrown a little bit into disarray. And I'm not keeping that a secret or anything. We were fully gearing up to be having some quite big recording days with the in-person group, which ironically was going to be the first in-person group on the podcast in a year and a half. And 3 days after I started putting I started thinking about, this is this weekend, we're going to do it then, maybe if I can get everybody together and stuff. They put social distancing guidelines in place so nobody can get together, and I'm the only one with decent microphones, so we can't, and I don't know, again, we had this conversation a little bit before we started recording about audio. Once you get into the audio freak thing, but it's kind of I don't know. I'm quite sensitive to drops in audio quality. I mean, but we do what we want on a bonus episode where we're just doing a world building thing or whatever. That's fine. But when it comes to ones where I'm doing the story game and that, where I put in the effort, if I've got time, with music and sound effects, I can't help but think if one person's on quite obviously on a very low quality mic, it really takes it out of the situation. So I kind of want to avoid that. So, as I say, this whole situation has really put that on hold. We're definitely still going to be playing with that group, but only when we can all get together and record, really. So it's all, the scramble culture is real.
It's one of these things, because we're still quite new to the old podcast thing, because we've released 12 episodes fortnightly or something like that at the moment. So we're still learning all of that stuff. So the quality is mostly okay, but there are definitely a couple of episodes where something's gone wrong and it's not been noticed in recording until afterwards, and it's been too difficult to fix and stuff. So,
yeah.
But broadly, I absolutely agree with you. And, you look at any of the research out there for podcasts, is bad audio is what will switch people off.
Oh, yeah. That's the first thing with me. Like, it doesn't matter. It could be something. It could be the most highly recommended podcast. If I turn it on and something's annoying me about the audio, I'll turn it straight off.
Yeah.
And I'll fully admit to being like weird audio quality freak. I spent 2 days a couple of weeks ago re-ripping a bunch of CDs that I'd ripped in the mid-2000s at a lower bit rate, because I'd convinced myself that I could hear the difference between 128 kilobits per second and 320. So that was my weirdness about that.
Whilst we're agreeing that audio quality is important, our thresholds are probably slightly different, AJ. So that's what I'm really hearing.
Yeah. I mean, but I don't know. I'm coming at it from this whole thing from a kind of a music background anyway, though. So that's sort of a little bit baked into my sort of recording process anyway. I mean, we record using Cubase, which is supposed to be more of a music production suite rather than, I mean, you can do it for anything. You can use it for any kind of recording, but like it's built as a music production thing as opposed to like Audacity, which is just like, hey, record something.
Well, I mean, we record twice. I do a backup on Audacity, which is obviously just a single track, so it's not that good. But we've also started using a Discord bot, so that when you download that, it takes everybody's individual feeds, so you get individual feeds, so you can do all the levels separately for everybody on the call.
That's super useful. That's exactly the kind of bot which I need to look into, really.
Yeah.
But yeah. But as I say, I mean, just from the music side of things, I mean, it's maybe sort of sensitivity to that, to having like spent a lot of time doing recording music style stuff, and spending so many hours doing mixing and things, you can hear every little imperfection and stuff. So when it comes to doing podcast, I can't stop myself from going like, well, that could be better, sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
I mean, the Craig bot might be a good thing for you to try, even if it's your backup rather than your main thing. But this is a bit where it's a bit harder for me, because I don't do the editing for our podcast. I just sit back and make stupid stories up.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, but that's the main thrust of the podcast, though, isn't it? You know, you're on the creative side, not the technical side on that. Yeah.
Things would be a lot worse. And again, one of the worst episodes was when I was left to my own devices. And that's when the recording went a bit haywire and all the levels were too difficult to fix afterwards.
It takes a bit of practice. I mean, I've got to the point now with, again, for listeners, this is just peek behind the editing curtain and everything. I've got to the point now where a lot of stuff is like, I've streamlined it for myself, where I have like preset like project files for like, I'm recording a Discord call with 3 people. I'm recording a Discord call with 4 people. Here's a track preset that I know is dialed into my microphone setup. Here's a track preset which is sort of okay from recording Discord,
Yep.
And it just smooths it all out. So rather than I'm basically just trying to cut down on the amount of clicks I have to do to have a decent sounding podcast. But
which is fair enough. Absolutely fair enough. But I think one of the things for us was, because we didn't go into it going, we want to make a podcast or a stream and have a big viewer stroke listenership and, make money out of it and stuff. We've kind of just, it's kind of meant we've not really planned things very well, because it's all just like, okay, well, let's do this. And, so I think we could have done things a lot better, but, it is what it is. And, it might never happen. So it's not something we're losing sleep over.
I mean, it's one of those things you live and learn with these sort of things. I mean, I certainly have, I haven't gone into this with any illusions about making any money or anything.
Yeah, no, neither did we. And as I say, the stream thing, I mean, we got to the point on Twitch where we actually managed to we've got affiliate status, and we were actually having people coming over and like giving their Amazon Prime.
Oh, wow. So you're making a little bit.
Our first year, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then over on Mixer, it's not monetized at all, but we decided actually just having a friendly community that was there with us was more important than a few quid.
Yeah.
So it's Yeah, it's an odd thing.
So how long have you actually been doing the stream? Like you say, you did your first season on Twitch and then moved to Mix It.
That must be two years, maybe coming up 3 years in the summer.
So with it all D&D the whole time.
The stream has always been D&D, just 5th edition, nothing else. And the podcast, our idea for that was very much to try and explore other systems. At the moment, we've just done, because as I say, we're quite new in the old podcasting, we've done Call of Cthulhu, and then our second one, we've fallen back on D&D 5th edition. Obviously, you are going to be joining us for our Alien RPG. Which
very well. At the time of recording this, we've done one session. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next.
Absolutely. And this is one where we're not pushing the recording too much, because I'm hoping that our friend's internet connection will be fixed and we can go back and finish off the Call of Cthulhu before, because that's why I did this short D&D one we're releasing at the moment, although it's turned out to be super fun with just 2 cast members, but it was basically a stopgap till the internet problems fix themselves and we could go back to finish off the Call of Cthulhu one, which I'm enjoying immensely, I must admit.
It's interesting to sort of see what you can come up with under difficult circumstances like that kind of thing. Like you say, you're sort of out of the comfort zone of like, okay, we've got the full technical setup. Now it's sort of like, what can we do to kind of keep this rolling, sort of thing. Yeah,
and because which I should say, I mean, we're worldwide because we've got one member of Saviours that's in West Coast United States, one in Southern Ireland, myself in the UK, and then we've got 2 members in Sweden. So physical, actual sat around a table is not going to happen anytime soon. Although we do hope that at some point in the future we will actually be able to meet up and have an in-person game, which would be absolutely super.
Have to find a midpoint between all the people.
Yeah, I mean,
somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic.
Now people I've played RPGs with for like 3-4 years, because like even before we were actually a group, so to speak, some of them 5 years actually, and I've not met any of them in person. So it is a strange world that we live in, but it's good nevertheless. But we've always kind of done things theatre of the mind as well, so it's just easier that way.
I mean that's definitely the style of play that works for this kind of format, I think. This is sort of, I mean, everybody's got their own style in that. I've never been one really to do a lot on the battle map side of things. I know a lot of people are sort of a little locked into the battle map sort of style of thinking. Where it's sort of like, oh, we can't play without our miniatures, which is, hey, like, if that's where you enjoy playing, that's great. I personally, from sort of not, we started with Star Wars, way back in the day, I kind of had to be the DM because I was organising the game and nobody else had ever played those type of games either and stuff, and I just wanted to play it. So, and I didn't have any miniatures, so it was just sort of like, well, I guess I'll just describe what's going on, and we just kind of stuck with that, and I find that works quite well for the podcast sort of side of things. Hopefully I'm keeping up with decent enough descriptions of what's happening.
And I think for podcasts especially, and there's obviously, if you're streaming, there are ways around it, but I think the technical aspects of having, especially an in-table one, you've got to have multiple cameras and stuff, and it's quite difficult to get done well.
You need a decent sort of studio setup to.
And it can be terrible for a podcast, because I think you're right. People, they kind of step back from describing things because it's like, well, it's just there. The map. You can see the map instead of explaining it. And I think actually it's much better getting into someone's memory with a nice flourish of words.
I mean, to be honest, that's kind of one of the reasons why. I mean, I know not everybody's into Critical Role, but I do follow them fairly. I'm usually fairly up to date. Yeah, but I know they put it out as a podcast. But like, I did try. Like, I'd already watched the episode that they'd put out as a podcast when they were putting them out, but it sort of wasn't the same. And especially when it got to like battles and stuff, it's exactly what you're saying. They're sort of, stuff's, Matt Mercer's a great DM and he's describing stuff on that, but there is an element, like you say, of like, okay, where are you putting your guy? And people going, okay, I want to move to here and stuff. And you just, if in an audio format, you're going like, where is here? What does that, what does here mean?
I think it's especially in Critical Role because they kind of specialise in these really large-scale, complex battles. It doesn't work well on a podcast at all.
No.
It's super on a stream because they've got, as you say, the nice studio setup with the multiple camera angles and stuff like that. The podcast, I've like you, I've stopped listening to it on the podcast because I found all those battles too confusing.
Yeah, I didn't get too far into listening to the podcast because it was when they were still at Geek and Sundry and it was being put out on there, and I think I listened to the first maybe 10-15 episodes of the podcast and I was like, okay, this is great to listen back to again, but I've already watched the streams of this and I am finding this tough going in a podcast format. Especially where the episodes were sort of, they're still the length they are, so it's like 3.5, 4 hour long podcasts and stuff, which is, I mean, that's excessive for that format, I think. And I know there are shows that go for that long every day, sometimes every week or whatever. I just don't have the time,
But then again, I know other ones are like that do stream for 3-4 hours, but when they release them as podcasts, they actually break that down into 2 or 3 episodes for the podcast. So, obviously, I think Critical Role have just decided it's not worth the extra editing time. But,
no,
it's fair play.
I mean, it's fair play. I mean, somebody has to sit down and edit it, and if you can just shove out the audio, that's so much easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I've actually kind of looked at like sort of what would a way be to do battle maps and things, but just that fact of like looking at it going like, I'm going to have to tweet out the JPEG of the battle map every time to be like, this was the battle we played in, which then runs the risk of spoiling it for somebody or whatever. Yeah. So I've kind of, I know I need to get better at my descriptions in terms of sort of like the theatre of the mind stuff, because especially at the end of a long session, I tend to just be like, so what are you doing? You guys are in the square room. What are you doing? But yeah, it is. It's sort of fun. I've had to sort of push myself a little bit. Yeah,
it's definitely a case of that. I think it's. I mean, my guys always have the joke that all of my characters sound like middle-aged Scotsmen. I'm a middle-aged Scotsman. I'm not great at voices. So
that's the default. Yeah. Yeah.
Some of them have got a slightly lower voice, and some of them have got a slightly higher voice. But
I've said it a lot that I know enough and talk to often enough Scottish people, yourself included, that I'm actively not attempting a Scottish accent just because I know it's I know all of you well enough that you'll just make fun of me at the worst, nobody's gonna have a go.
It can't be worse than Matthew Mercer. Matthew Mercer is an excellent voice actor. His Scottish accents are horrendous and I cringe at them.
They're pretty stereotypical, aren't they? Yeah.
I mean, it's what Scots people call Hollywood Scottish. Like nobody speaks like that at all.
No.
There are a few actors that actually have genuinely good Scottish accents, and when you look into them, it's usually because they've actually got real Scottish relatives.
As a comedian,
they're not doing a Scottish accent; they're doing their dad or whatever.
There's a comedian who he's actually on the podcast The Dollop, Gareth Reynolds, and his normal talking voice is like just American, and occasionally when doing like a weird character and that he'll do like a Scottish accent, and it's because his uncle's Scottish, and when he was younger his uncle would do it, and it's like, I won't say it's 100% spot on, but it's like 95% of the way there, shall we say. It's like good enough to be better. I mean, obviously it's not my accent, so yeah, whatever, but it's, you know what I mean, it's that thing of like, okay,
but you do get it as well, because you know that especially coming from like Hollywood, there is just a quintessential British accent, which is that sort of English accent that doesn't really exist anymore. The sort of the old 1950s BBC. I forget.
It's flip a coin and you either get posh or you get Cockney.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, this is what British people sound like. It's like, well, sort of, but not really.
Yeah. So although I'm speaking about it from a Scottish perspective, you get it as well, and I'm fairly sure French people and Spanish people and stuff get exactly the same thing. It's it's just one of these things.
I do, yeah. I'm not against doing voices, and I do voices on the podcast, but I've been trying to get better at like keeping them as subtle as possible.
Yeah.
I know in the first couple episodes, I just some pretty egregious Irish accents going on from me. In my defense, I was a little nervous anyway because it was our first couple of episodes recording in that. So I kind of toned it back a little bit for the second story arc and that. It's the same characters talking, but I just was kind of like, I went from like not quite like offensive, but like, okay, this is a little over the top, to like scaling it back to how God, what's his name? Colin Farrell talks. So a little bit kind of quite subtle in that. And I sort of like, okay, if I can aim for this anytime I'm doing an accent of like, that's definitely not my normal twang, but I'm not like top of the morning to you or anything like that. I think it'll be fine.
I don't know if you struggle with the thing as well. Like when I started doing our Call of Cthulhu in the podcast, so I had one of the characters, and it's set on the sort of rural west coast of Scotland. So I had a lot of the characters with an accent that I recognise as being West Highland Islander. It's a very sort of sing-song, and there's a real lilt in it.
Right.
And it's kind of a little bit like Irish, but I think it's because of the common language. There's still a lot of Gaelic speakers in the West Highlands and the Islands. Obviously, in Ireland, there's still a lot of Gaelic speakers. So the way they pronounce things is quite similar, but it's still very distinct in its own way.
Yeah.
But I've got this problem that I know that I start mimicking other people's accents.
Oh, God, I do that all the time.
So one of my players is Irish, and I kept this character just keeps sort of going from what I think is a fairly good West Highland accent to Southern Irish, and a bad Southern Irish. I'm not sure he's even good, but it's just I've got this terrible thing of that. I don't know. I can't do anything about it.
I'm really bad for that. I do that all the time, and I'm not the only one. A mate of mine does it as well, and like he like nothing podcast related. He just brought it up one day. He goes, "Do you do that thing where you start like mimicking people when you talk to them?" Like, yeah, I do. But like, he had the problem at the time. He was working for an international bank, and he was having to take calls from people all over the world, and he was like having to actively stop himself from like mimicking them because they would immediately be like, "Are you making fun of me?" sort of thing.
Whereas actually, I think it's the exact opposite. I think it's actually a sympathetic thing because you're listening to people and you're wanting to empathise with them.
Yeah.
So that's where I think it's totally subconscious, but I actually think it does come from a good place. But sorry,
well, let's hope so.
As expected, I've taken you off at a really weird tangent.
Oh no, this is a good tangent. But yeah,
I do think it does come from a good place. But as I say, it can be misconstrued. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, on the voices thing then, is that something you're sort of like trying to get, like, to bring it back in my super ham-fisted bad interviewer way, bring it back to the podcast? Is that something you're sort of looking to kind of like do a bit more of, or is this, as your players say, more
I think
middle-aged
there's a bit
Scottish
of it
men?
that just goes, will I think just confidence and just go for it, actually, to be honest with you, even if some of them don't work out. But I think one of my biggest problems is remembering, especially if you've got lots of NPCs.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like, how did they speak again? So then actually just having slight minor tonal changes to yourself make that easier. But
that was definitely something I ended up doing with Things from the Flood, because where it's sort of the sort of fake town that we set it in is kind of like a bit of a sort of fake version of the town I actually live in. I didn't really need to change people's voices too much, but like it was little differences between where I had two characters who were right next to each other and basically every scene they were in, the professor and the doctor. And I had to be like, oh, God, how am I going to differentiate these ones? So I had the professor, I was just like, I just go a little bit higher and sound a little bit wavery, but like he's in charge, but he's not having it. And then the doctor just be a bit more no nonsense and stuff, and just sort of, but still have it not be just my normal talking voice, but like only slightly different. It's It's tough.
I think what I'm trying to do more of is more not necessarily about an accent, but about the language they use and the pace of their speaking and things like that. I think that differentiates things for me better in my head.
Yeah. I have the problem, and I've definitely, as an editor, noticed it, that this is just a problem in how I talk, is that I tend to kind of talk in kind of little bursts, and that's something I need to kind of get a little bit better at sort of shaking. And like, I wouldn't have really even noticed it if I wasn't looking at waveforms of myself talking, but like, I've started actually actively, when I'm doing the edit, cutting down the gaps in between my little bursts so that a sentence sounds like a normal person is talking. But it's not just me. I mean, he might disagree with me, but I think my brother does it as well. Like, I listen back to myself talking, and it's in these sort of little kind of like, if not a full sentence, then sort of like a chunk of a sentence, and then a slight pause, and then a chunk of a sentence, and we both talk like it. So I don't know where we've kind of picked that up from, but I'm actively trying not to do it at the moment as I'm saying this. Like, just the irony of it.
We all. I mean, that's just part of who we are, though. I mean, we've all. I mean, if you again, I think it goes back to your thing about audio and things like that you maybe analyze these things a lot more than a lot of people. But I think if we all scrutinize the way we talk, that we would do that all the time. I mean, I know I'm really bad. One of my big problems, and it definitely is a problem when I'm streaming and stuff, is I will just stop in the middle of a sentence, and it's in a different way. It's because, like, I've engaged my brain. I'm now thinking of things, and I lose track of how long I've paused for.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough if you're on a stream rather than on an edited podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I suppose on a stream they can see that you're just like, I've got the confused face on. But yeah, I mean, and going back to that, it's funny how different the pressures of streaming and doing a podcast is, even if essentially the content's the same. Very different, because you have to be, people watching a stream. And as I say, we only sort of did this just to record, and then it was like, 3 people that we don't know came and watched us for 4 hours, and then like after 6 months it was like, we're not some huge Critical Role, but I mean, I think at one point at our height on Twitch we're getting like 35 people a week coming.
That's not bad. I mean, the way Eden looks at it, this is in regards normally to download numbers, but the way he said it is like, if you can look at your numbers and go, well, that wouldn't look too bad if we were in like a small theatre or something, then that's, not a bad place to sort of be, kind of thing. And 35 people, if you're in like a small theatre, that wouldn't be empty.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, that's when we sort of started thinking about other things, and like, because we didn't bother really with production and stuff like that, because we were just doing it for our own sake, and then suddenly people are there, and it's just like, But the point I was trying to make was, what people in a stream want more than anything is, if you say you are going to go live at 3:00 on a Sunday, by hell, you need to go live at 3:00 on a Sunday. Yeah. Even if you're a few minutes late, you see, like, if you're struggling a wee bit and the viewer count just drops off because they find something else, because that's when they want to watch something. Whereas obviously in a podcast, especially if you're managing to get a bit in advance of yourself and have a few episodes banked, it's not so hard that, and you can record, I'll do it on a Tuesday this week and I'll do it on a Thursday next week. I know it's still better to have an actual pattern if you can, but if someone has a life issue and you can reschedule in a couple of days, it's not going to be a problem, whereas that would just kill a stream.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely had it a few times where I've been kind of right up against it with the whole kind of recording and releasing schedule. And there is a definite amount of stress there, and it does affect the final thing, like you say, whereas I like to have as much recorded in advance, so then I can be like, okay, I don't have the pressure there of like, this needs to be out in 3 days or anything like that. And it's, I mean, I always aim to put stuff out at midnight on Thursday. Well, it's technically Wednesday night, but midnight on Wednesday night, so midnight on Thursday. And it's the point where, like, okay, if I miss that, the stress level starts going up. And I haven't missed it that often, but we did miss it with last week's one, and I was a bit stressed out about that, should we say? Yeah. But yeah, it was more of a case of like, I've not finished this to the level that I'm happy with it. But yeah.
Whilst I agree it's good things need to go out on time, I don't think it's as... what's the right word to use here? I don't think it's quite as detrimental to the listeners.
No.
In a podcast, because most people are downloading it and listening to it at their leisure. That's the thing with a stream, is people are wanting it there and then.
Yeah, it's like appointment viewing sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the old school of TV, before there was videos and stuff. If you missed EastEnders or Coronation Street or whatever, there was no way you were going to get it back in the olden days.
No reruns or catch up or iPlayer or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's definitely a thing, but yeah.
So not in a wrapping it up way, but kind of in a sort of leaning that way. What's next for you said you obviously said about we're doing Alien, which I'm very excited about. But what's next for Saviours RPG? So are you planning on coming back and doing more streaming, or is sticking with the podcast?
We definitely are. I think it's one of these things that our first stream was like a big, long sort of classic campaign that was like 40 odd episodes or something like that. Then we kind of thought we're going to do short stories. So the first one on Mixer was sort of a bit of my take on Frankenstein.
Oh wow! Okay,
and it was kind of like it was I had it as an enlightened flesh golem that was thing, but it was the same sort of thing, roughly following the sort of Frankenstein story, but obviously with fantasy bits, and I really enjoyed that. But because our podcast is sort of short stories as well, of anywhere between sort of 6 and 12 episodes, I would imagine. I don't know. I think because we've had such a long break, we've got an opportunity to think we definitely will be streaming again. But I think we need to need to sit down and think of, do we want to mix it up? So we've got the podcast for the nice sort of short stories or shorter stories, and why not do the stream as a more sort of traditional long form D&D campaign? But
so sort of rather than cutting up the stream one into episodes, you'd have it be two separate things.
Yes,
sort of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. But again, I think we all need to sit down and see exactly what to go. So it's definitely, the stream is a watch this space, because I think no matter what we do, we're basically, I think we'll have lost most of the viewership that we had. So we're kind of having to start from scratch again anyway after an almost 5-month break. So
yeah, maybe a time to not to sort of have a bit of a refresh on it or something.
Yeah,
maybe kick off like a new story on there to sort of start it off as like, okay, here we go, here's phase 2 or something. I don't know. Yeah,
absolutely. And I had one written that we were going to be starting straight. We were going to take like Christmas off for 3 or 4 weeks, and then this happened. So I've got one written, but I could easily just use that for the podcast in the future.
Yeah, always good to kind of hang on to those things to sort of go back to them when you need them.
Yeah, well, there's nothing lost, is there?
I've got a folder full of like weird ideas that often are like stuff I've written on my phone while I'm at work, like this maybe, I guess.
Yeah, I've always got a notebook next to me, and it's just got random stuff. It's just like a weird name, like NPC names, or sitting watching a film and it's not very good, and I'll just start sitting down writing down a list of fantasy pub and drink names.
You never get enough pub names, that's the thing. And
oh no, absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, okay. Let's sort of bring this. I mean, we're running at 55 minutes nearly. So I mean, I think this has been good. I mean, so we've, like you say, Alien definitely is coming. Well, be coming to the feed at some point.
Absolutely, and I mean, I think hopefully I've got a Tales from the Loop. I know you did a Things from the Flood.
We did, although I will say we didn't really stick to any of the normal settings or anything. It was only kind of nominally.
I mean, I'm the same. It's rules are good, but we are very much a rules light kind of group.
Sure.
They're there to help,
Yeah.
but I'm not worried about breaking them if it suits. But I know one of my players wants to play Monster of the Week, which is kind of a bit like Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets Teen Wolf sort of thing.
I believe that's
quite
the
a sort
system.
of pop.
I think they played the second season of Adventure Zone used that, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Blades in the Dark. I've also got Carbon. Oh, what's it called?
Altered Carbon. Is that it?
No, it's where is it? Carbon 2185. It's
Okay.
it was a Kickstarter that I backed, and it is a D&D 5e edition rule set specifically for Cyberpunk setting.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. So I want to look into that as well. It's,
a lot on the horizon.
Definitely a lot more Call of Cthulhu. I really like Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah. Well, I know we'd spoken before, and you said you'd sort of listened to our one and gone like, "Oh, that sounds fun." So it's interesting. I'm glad you're carrying on the torch.
Yeah, no. I really, really like it, and I think more and more one of the things that start doing, and again, it's maybe goes back to Penance and Nikolai, is he doesn't have a rule set; he just does his own thing, and I think whilst I never go quite that far, I see myself starting to take bits. Like I can absolutely see a future where I do a D&D session, but I have the sanity rules from Call of Cthulhu in it.
Yeah, no, that's a good. I think there are. There's probably some rules for Madness. I think in one of the DM's guide or something. But yeah, I mean, just fully translating the
absolutely.
the Cthulhu ones would be quite fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Or even like instead of the you get inspiration in D&D, take that away and actually do luck the same way they do in Call of Cthulhu. So you've got X amount of points to spend across a campaign, and once you run out of them, that's you gone.
Yeah, I believe that's in Monster of the Week or something like that, I think.
Yeah. And there's a bit that I already took from Blades in the Dark, and it's about building relationships.
Right.
So you have basically like a pie chart, and you have to go through a number of checks. And once the pie chart's filled in, or if it's not filled in after a certain amount of attempts, then you can build a positive relationship. Or if it's failed, you get a negative relationship. I think that's quite good for more complex relationships when people are trying to build them with NPCs and things like that.
There is a little bit of a system like that in the Star Wars Saga Edition one, but that's more of a kind of sort of encounter to encounter. You have to kind of do it NPC by NPC, and there's sort of actions that you can sort of... so say you're trying to hack a computer, and it's like attitude level or something, so it start at a neutral attitude, and if you pass the check, you can get it, so it will do... you can get it to a friendly attitude, or you can go unfriendly attitude, and then things get harder and stuff. We didn't really do a lot of that when we recorded it, and it's something, even when I played it, off recording years ago, we didn't really get into it. But it's an interesting idea of like, okay, here's some specific actions laid out in the rules to like improve, and there's not just computers and things that you can do. There's actions that like, okay, you can do this to improve the attitude of an NPC towards you and stuff like that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it wasn't something I wanted to bring in. It was specifically one of the players sort of said, I want to be able to do this, even if it's a long-term thing. And after researching it, that's where I did that. So it was quite good. It was well received by the player. So again, it's not something I'll force in, but it's there in the background if it ever comes up again.
Yeah, it's helpful to have in your back pocket as a sort of thing to do.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, well, I think we can bring this train into the station.
See, now you're learning. I can ramble almost as much as Bellry, just a bit more restrained.
It is rambling with a purpose. We didn't immediately start Googling like expensive Japanese statues and things. So we'll call that a win.
Do you know what I've been doing in the background?
So where can everybody find Saviours?
Mostly, it's probably best to follow us on our Twitter, which is just at Saviours RPG, and then all the links to our Podbean and various other Mixer and things like that are all available there. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
One-stop shop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Some of the other links are a bit, they're sometimes difficult to read out. So,
I found that
just nice and neat.
I found that with the invite links for the Discord server. I haven't yet figured out how to put out to write your own symbol. There's probably some way of putting out your own specific string of letters. So it could actually be like a Discord /PWD server or something. Instead, it's some long string of random letters that I keep forgetting.
I've never managed to work that out either. It's exactly the same thing.
Yes. Well, anyway, thanks so much for joining me for this, man. I hope this has been a pleasure. Fun chat.
It has, always is.
Yeah. As for listeners, hopefully we'll be back next week with some gaming for you. I don't know. I started that sentence without knowing how I was going to end it. It's looking like we're going to be playing Star Trek Adventures, so stay tuned for that. Hopefully that should be out as normal next Thursday. In the meantime, you can get in contact with us, Twitter and Facebook. We are at Pretend with Dice. Come hang out on our Discord server. There's a link in our Twitter bio. Leave us a high rating and review on iTunes if the spirit grabs you to do that. But we'll see you all next time. Have a good one.